Here we are, we're back again.
Oh, we're singing our intro
Why
now.
not? I'm in a melodious mood.
We are the gaming lovers.
Number one podcast.
You wish.
The Gaming Lovers Podcast with Brendo and Jem.
Yippee skippy, here we are. The gaming lovers back again in the booth recording a podcast.
Yep. G'day, I'm Jem.
Are you?
I am.
Well, I'm Brendo.
Nice to know. We're seriously not very good at this part.
I don't like it's always awkward. Well, to be honest, at my work, I meet so many different people that I rarely get their name early on. So I spend like 40 to 50 minutes talking to someone, then go, oh, by the way, I'm Brendo. And by that point, it always feels too late for the introduction. So me and introductions never really go that well. Anyway, how has your gaming week been?
Uneventful. My gaming goal from last week was to play through the Guardians of the Galaxy Telltale series.
You thought you could beat all 5 episodes.
I didn't even start it.
And that's the end of the podcast because she has no gaming updates. Well, sometimes life gets in the way.
I have been chasing some trophies in Danganronpa V3.
Well, there you go.
And playing other games.
What would they be?
No, it's not
hang
relevant.
on.
It's not. Nah, you don't need to know that.
Can we just... I need a little clarification. You haven't played what you set out to play.
No.
What did you play instead?
Dragon Age 2.
Dragon Age 2.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
I'm
History
sorry.
repeats itself yet again.
It's still... I know, and I finished a playthrough, and then I really wanted to play through and make different choices. And so I did.
It's okay. There's no judgment, maybe a little judgment, but no major judgment from me. I deferred some of my gaming time yesterday to live stream some Sonic Mania.
Yes.
And that was just I wasn't going to break any records, wasn't really going for all Chaos Emeralds or anything like that. I was just doing a nice, casual playthrough with my boy Tails, who I don't play with that much. Back in the day, on the Mega Drive Genesis era, I used to always play as Tails because he can fly, and that makes the game a little easier. So when you're younger, your motor skill's not so good, there's a tricky jumping section coming up, you just play as Tails, you just fly over it. Easy peasy. Since then, Sonic has won my heart, and I like to play as him, as boring as he can be sometimes.
Were you just called Sonic boring?
Well, he has less fancy powers than the others. But anyway, don't let him hear that. I've
Does he have ears? No, he does have ears.
Most of my gaming time this week has been allocated to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
I have completed 2 legendary beasts, which isn't a large spoiler. We don't do spoiler talk here, so it's just a general update of where I'm up to, progress-wise. It's fun. I'm having fun. Even if occasionally I detonate a bomb a little too close to myself and get catapulted off a cliff.
Now that we need like a montage video of.
Oh, it's happened plenty. I'll just throw this bomb to detonate these ores and it rolls back at me and see you later, off the edge of the cliff. Splat.
The thing that I think that's helped you play Breath of the Wild as much as you've been able to is because you can take it with you to work sometimes.
That does help.
It's rare that you can pick up a console and just take it with you. Not that that stopped you necessarily before.
Well, I have had some opportunities to squeeze in some gaming in between work, which has been very good at helping me get through certain games.
Work.
That's a Warcraft 2 reference.
Yes, it is. Back when I was working at the radio station in Melbourne, sometimes you'd come in to keep me company. You'd bring a console and connect it to one of the TVs in the green room and just play there during my show. And I'd pop in every once in a while and go, how's your game going?
That is how I played the entirety of Super Mario Galaxy. Because it was all done on the road, basically.
Yep. It's a lot easier, though, with the Switch.
Yes, very much so. And another added benefit is if something is on, we're both wrestling fans as well. Sometimes giving your full attention to a 3-hour show is a bit of a stretch of focus sometimes. So, can have the Switch, play the Switch, keep it up to date with what's happening on the screen here and there. Mm-hmm. And
listen to people argue on commentary.
It's good use of time and games.
Yes. And I would say one of the more successful gimmicks from Nintendo in recent years, that being able to go on the road and the Joy-Cons and just the way that it's all structured works really well for it.
My goodness, if I had the capability to take a console on the road, so many opportunities where your parents are going, all right, road trip to grandma's house, which is 3 hours away, and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do on this trip? Just imagine taking a portable console with you back then. Like an actual console. I'm not talking about your obsolete, old school brick of a Game Boy.
Oh, obsolete.
Well, I'm just saying, for actual modern day console quality games, that's bamboozling the technology that has emerged with the Switch. When it was first announced, I was very suspicious and quite a bit suspect because Nintendo do have a bit of a hit and miss history when it comes to gimmicks. Mm-hmm. They love their gimmicks.
That they do. And it's true. It is fair to say that the quality on consoles and PCs, I would say, is a little higher than what you'd get, or at least what you used to get on handheld consoles.
Yeah.
So the Game Boy in the early days, especially, was very much like that 8-bit look, or whichever level you had, or whatever generation. But the games that you played on them weren't the same kind of epics that you could have when it was on a hard drive on a console.
Yeah, that's what I meant when I obsolete's probably the exact wrong word to use.
No,
but you think about like when the Pokemon first generation games came out. Great games, but I'm talking comparing that technology to the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation 1 that were out on a home console market. The difference between the two, technology-wise, was enormous.
Yeah.
And nowadays, with the Switch, it's incredible how you lose a little frame rate and maybe a bit of resolution when you do take it to portable mode, but it still has hardware to produce some incredible graphics, and I'm at a loss for words, which is probably a bad thing for a podcast.
It's one of the reasons why it's a little bit more expensive to get games on the Switch, because of the technology and having to be on the little cartridges that have that stuff on it that if like a kid tries to eat it, they'll want to spit it out because it tastes gross.
The coating. Have you actually tried it? Have you licked a Switch cartridge?
No, I have not.
The first time I heard about that, I saw a news article from a video game website where they try different snacks from around the world. And one of them said, we're trying Nintendo Switch cartridges. And I'm like, what?
Delicious.
Apparently not so much. It is so that if the dog or the 2-year-old pick one up, try to give it a little chomp. Something SD card shaped is, a small little cracker on the floor.
Easy
delicious.
to choke on.
And there you go. Maybe we'll road test that one of these days.
I'm making you do it.
I'll give Breath of the Wild a good licking.
Surely that's got to damage the cartridge. Depends on which part you lick, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Don't lick the pins.
Over the years, video game developers have been on the forefront of new technology. Like, that's kind of their thing.
Yep. There's always either a hardware or a game developer that sort of tries new things. Not always successful, but then other developers work on that and smooth out the edges.
I think both Sony and Nintendo are big risk takers in that area. Sony with its VR and Move. You've got the Xbox with their Kinect, Nintendo with the Wii. When that launched, was such a new thing to be able to have the Wii remotes and have them respond the way that they did. No one had seen anything really like that at the time, so it was a big deal. Yeah,
but even that, like I said, certain people try something new. It doesn't quite work. The PlayStation 3 had what was called the 6-axis technology, which actually had, you could steer certain games using just tilting your controller.
Mm-hmm.
Now that didn't always respond the way it should and ultimately wasn't that helpful.
Oh, heavy rain.
But, yes, exactly. But motion sensing technology was still there, and the Wii refined that to the point where it was basically the selling point of the console.
Yep. And I think a lot of parents really liked it because they saw their kids not just sitting on the couch, but actually up and moving and looking like complete dorks, but still movement. And it seems like a healthier option. If they're going to have a gaming console in their household, they're going to have one that at least...
make the kids less chubby?
Make it look like there's exercise involved and not just sitting on your butt.
Yeah, that was a big selling point marketing-wise. You could get the kids active. Wii Fit was a thing on that with the whole weight balance sensor thing.
To the point where the Wii Fit, like, weird model thing became a character in Smash Brothers, which I thought was just the most bizarre entry ever.
There's been some strange ones.
They're always pushing, like, new technology to the limit and to see how they can best use it to create a new gaming experience. And sometimes quick money, because if it's gimmicky, like I remember with 3D or VR, like sometimes people will make really quick games that aren't the best.
The PlayStation Move in particular, which was basically Sony's counterpoint to the Wii, the little handheld
yes, with
controllers.
Like the balls on the end.
You required a camera, which has sort of made it like a hybrid Kinect Wii combo, but that had shovelware galore of just garbage, low-budget games. I can't think of anything that was must-play with a PlayStation Move aspect.
You're listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. Want to join the conversation? Visit thegaminglovers.com. Record your comment or question by clicking on the button on the right-hand side, and you could be featured in the next podcast.
So what do you think, out of all the gimmicks that we've seen and will see, like things that are just starting to emerge, I guess, as mainstream kind of technology with gaming, what do you think is going to kind of stand the test of time, and what are we going to look back on and be like, why did they do that?
Well, to be honest, a lot of them do have that initial burst of excitement. This is great. Like the Wii, for example. Everyone was so excited. Oh, Wii Sports, you can swing the controller and it swings your tennis racket. You can bowl. And if you hold the button over the amount of time you're supposed to bowl and then you bowl again, you'll pretty much always get a perfect strike. That's a little fun quirk I figured out. Everyone was so excited for it. But then there were certain games. We talked about my rough history with the Zelda series. Twilight Princess required you to swing the Wiimote to swing your sword. And when you're doing fights, it's exhausting and frustrating when it's not responding when it should. I just want to press a button to swing my sword. Is that too much to ask?
At least have the option.
And as that generation continued and more developers tried to ham-fist in waggle controls, the gaming community sort of soured on that. They did refine it later with the Wii Remote Motion Plus, which made it more precise, required you to buy fresh
New
controllers.
ones. Yeah, so they weren't cheap.
But still, I would prefer a lot of times. Sometimes it's fun and immersive and it's fun for little mini games, but over the course of a whole game, it's sort of exhausting. And speaking of Nintendo, the 3DS, another bit of technology that I could not get my head around when it first launched. How on earth can you have 3D gaming without glasses? I'd played, when we got a new TV at the time, I played the Sly Raccoon series on the PlayStation 3 with 3D glasses from our new TV.
Yeah.
And that was like, oh, this is incredible. I can see in 3D. I can see depth. And that's pretty much as the excitement goes, and then it ends. Just like I don't like seeing movies in the cinema on 3D because
especially
it
long ones.
exhausts my brain more. And there's always that bit that goes out of focus here and there, and you spend half the time going, oh, my eyes are like trying to go cross-eyed. What is going on? Not for me, maybe for other people.
Yeah. I think 3D technology is has always been quite gimmicky.
Yes.
To me, I kind of tie it in with, like, when I go to Disney and they have the Muppets 3D show. And they do all the gimmick shots and stuff like that. For 5-10 minutes, it's fun.
Look out, here comes a custard pie into the screen.
And there goes the Frisbee. The Frisbee is the popular one. But I understand wanting to have worlds where it feels like you are stepping into it and walking through it. And that's kind of cool, but it does, like you said, it exhausts the brain, and I think it ends up hurting the experience to the point where a lot of people we know that use like 3DSs and stuff, because you've got the switch on the side, will turn it off because it just drives them nuts or it gives them headaches. And now they've learnt their lesson that they've released the 2DS in like the extra large in a whole bunch now, just because people don't want the 3D.
Yeah, if I've ever used it, and I used it early on for games like Professor Layton and the Miracle Mask, whatever it was called, things like that, I always had it set to the bare minimum 3D, just to get that little bit of extra depth.
Yeah.
But anything above that, when there's a warning on the box that says usage of 3D visuals for children under 6 can cause permanent vision damage, you know you're playing with just a little bit of fire.
Yeah.
Plus, I play most of my 3DS time when I'm travelling on trains, and your eyes can't focus if it's bouncing around. It basically has to be perfectly still with your head in a certain position to get the full effect. And as soon as you move it a smidge, it's all over.
You can't look at it from an angle or anything like that. So it makes it even more difficult to play. So it's, for me, 3D, especially when they brought out the 3D TVs, I felt like that was a gimmick that was for quick money and not something that would be substantial, because we knew it had a negative effect on our body.
Mm-hmm.
It will be interesting. I hope that they can tie in the technology maybe in other ways and find a way that it doesn't exhaust the eyes and brain.
Yes.
But until that happens, just stay away from it.
VR is sort of similar in that sort of field as well, where it's good in the short term. What's that place we went to in North Melbourne called?
Zero latency.
Zero latency VR. That is a barrel of fun.
So much fun.
You spend like an hour in an empty warehouse, basically, with, you and 6 of your mates, or however many you can fit in.
I think you can do 6 at a time, so you and 5 other friends.
Okay. Tell that 6th friend next time, buddy. Next
they
time.
can stand there and film you looking like an idiot, like one of our friends did last time we went, as we're dancing around with headsets on.
You put on a VR headset, you have a big giant gun you carry around.
It's
you got
so heavy too.
Computer in a backpack, and the 6 of you are all synced up in a game, and the empty warehouse doesn't feel so empty.
No.
When you're crossing a skinny bridge at the top of skyscrapers.
And they have like a giant fan that will blow, so you feel like you're kind of being like swept off your feet a little bit. So they include a lot of sensory things to make it feel legit.
Pulled the curtain back on the magic show.
Oh, well,
But it was pretty cool.
It was awesome.
So that's good. And you play that for about 50 minutes, but after that, your head's getting sore from the VR heavy headset crushing
Goggles.
The bridge of your nose. Your eyes, like I said, are sort of stressing out because they're having a bit of confusion as to what's real and what should I focus on.
And having a screen that close to your eyes is also not something you should really have, especially for a prolonged period of time.
Well, fun fact, the VR goggles have like the reverse binocular effect. Have you ever looked into binoculars the wrong way and things look really far away? Mm-hmm. That's what happens inside the VR goggles. So it makes the eyes think the screen's actually further away than it is.
Clever.
But still, it's an assault on the sensitive part of your eyes, just with that light just booming into your face. Mm-hmm. Can be a bit exhausting, like we said, on the old eyes.
I did some little digging on VR because I didn't know much. For me, VR, I always thought the earliest instances we ever saw it was like in Daria, when they go to like an arcade place and they've got the little treadmill things and they lock them in place so they can run, and they're in like really blocky virtual worlds, like fighting each other.
And that was shown in Daria.
That was Daria, and for me that
90s?
Yeah.
Early 90s?
Early 90s. And for me that was like probably my earliest experience with virtual reality, so maybe that's why I tie that in with that's when it started. But it's been around for so much longer. Can you believe as early as the 1930s they've been working on this technology?
1930s?
1930s.
I'm amazed they even had anything that could run it in the 1930s.
I know. So there's literature, like sci-fi books and such, people who are coming up with ideas of people living in virtual reality and having virtual reality systems in place. And then in 1962, Morton Halig, I don't know if I'm saying his name right.
Halig?
Built a prototype, the Sensorama. Doesn't that sound like such a 60s name?
It's like a sequel to Futurama.
Sensorama. Or the Telesphere mask. So he created and made like the first ever headset, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And the spectator was given a complete sensation of reality with moving three-dimensional images, peripheral vision, scent. They would have
scent
as well. And they even included smell.
Just a guy sitting there with an air freshener going,
This is just spraying
You're in the
perfume
forest
at their
now.
face.
Can't you smell the forests?
And they had sound and breeze come through, all these things to make them believe that
When
they
was
were
that?
somewhere
1962.
1962. And that was when the first like proper prototype was around. Like that blows my mind that this technology has been in the work for a long time and we're still ironing out the kinks, you know what I mean?
A lot of those like 80s, the 60s surprised me, but I figured 70s was where it would start to take effect a bit more.
Well, that's when they started using it more for like medical, military, flight simulation, that sort of thing throughout
Flight
the 70s.
simulations doesn't surprise me because every like sci-fi, schlocky movie from the 70s and 80s, they'd have a VR headset that goes on.
Yep.
You'd see like 6 dots going past their vision.
I mean, it was all very basic. It was nothing fancy. The visuals that they got were, very blocky, kind of what you'd expect from that time. You think of what computer screens looked like in their early stages. Very similar visuals as far as VR was concerned as well.
Yeah, and there have been multiple attempts in the video game world, because I know, are you familiar with the Virtual Boy?
Was that Nintendo?
Yes. Oh, I hope you like red, because that's basically all you can see.
Yep.
Like the original Game Boy had like the green and black sort of visuals.
Mm-hmm.
That was an assault of red and black. And anybody who studied art knows that red is a very like offensive colour to your eyes and brain.
Mm-hmm.
So if I get headaches from anything, it would probably be that.
Mm-hmm. Atari, I think, were working on virtual reality in the early 80s, but had to close because of the video game crash that happened in America.
Oh, the whole market fell apart.
Which is kind of a shame. It'd be interesting to see where we would be and where Atari would be if that hadn't happened.
Very interesting. Well, I know it's certainly become more profitable and more successful in recent years, especially with the widespread, PCs are superpowered these days. So that was what was holding a lot of it back. Nothing had the processing power to properly create a 3D world that you could actually react to with your head movements and things like that. And I remember when I thought it was absolutely ridiculous that Facebook bought the Oculus Rift system, the rights and everything to that. Do you know how much they purchased that for?
A fair chunk of cash, I'm pretty sure.
Fair chunk of cash. About $2 billion with a B.
Facebook, of all people, is not who you associate virtual reality with. Although a lot of people kind of live in their own virtual reality on Facebook, I guess. So, there's some meta thought for you.
But as far as widespread home console goes, the only really successful one has been the PlayStation VR, the PSVR.
Project Morpheus.
We all remember that. It's like the Matrix, of course. Of course they're going to call it Project Morpheus. Some people are so creative and make some cracking, hilarious videos of like the LA Noire VR DLC, and they're playing with their hats and putting their fingers in people's ears, and it's so juvenile, but I love it.
What was that one that was going viral recently where I think they're in like a pub?
Yeah.
And it's got like, I think it's Bar Fight or something.
Yeah, it's just a simple name like that.
Yeah, and it's so basic, but this is where the basicness kind of works in its favour, because it's almost like a meme creator. It's hilarious, and there's a group of guys that go in and will like role play basically that they're drunk in a bar and start fights with all the patrons in it. With the most ridiculous circumstances, and you got like ragdoll, like extreme ragdoll
The
physics.
people look like they weigh about 6 kilos because they just pick
take
them up
one hit
throw
and they
them.
go flying across the room. It's so funny. Some of the montages we found on the internet of this virtual reality game, it's just hilarious. So much fun to watch. Things like that I love, but again, I don't know if there'd be a long shelf life for that. But that being said, you could build upon that foundation of something that's really simple and basic and create something magical. Mm-hmm. What game? Was it Resident Evil?
Resident Evil 7 in virtual reality.
I feel like that's been the most successful virtual reality game so far.
Well, even with the PlayStation VR, a lot of the games are like little mini games, basically. Like it'll be an on-rail shooter, which is the Until Dawn Rush of Blood, or it'll be, Surgeon Simulator style, where it's just like one mini game.
Yep.
Resident Evil 7, I'm pretty sure, is the first mainstream full release game that you can play normal or you can play in VR. A first-person horror game. Could you think of anything more terrifying?
Nope.
Now, I'm a big fan of Resident Evil. I've played 1 through 6. I'm yet to play 7, partly because I was curious if I got a PlayStation VR, if I'd want to play through it my first time in VR. Because you only get that first run through a game once. That would be the most terrifying experience.
If you do it, can I film you?
If I do it, I don't know, can you live stream while you're playing VR? I suppose you can, because those videos
You should be able to.
Oh boy.
Have you just volunteered?
No, I haven't yet. Well, we don't have a PlayStation VR, thankfully.
Oh, maybe someone will send us one.
No, I don't like it.
And here you're trying to threaten me to like live stream horror games. I think you need to step up to the plate.
Even though I'm too scared to do it.
I think virtual reality is a bit more promising in the long run than 3D as far as a gaming gimmick goes. Mm-hmm. I am excited to see where it's going to go in the future. Part of me is like hoping that it doesn't turn into a world like Ready Player One or Sword Art Online, where they can connect to our nervous systems and take us.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very appealing, to be honest.
But you could imagine it getting that far if the technology was there and people
were dumb enough.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Essentially, but the idea of being in a virtual world, like I think it was in one of the more recent seasons of Sword Art Online. Oh, it's kind of spoiler territory. Where you've got a girl that's stuck in hospital and can't walk, can't move, and the virtual world is her escape.
Yep. Where
she can fly and use her legs and fight. And I love that idea. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think to be able to use virtual technology for those that may be stuck in a coma as a way to kind of maybe trigger certain things in their brain to help them wake up or something.
Well, you can think about the combination of existing technology. The potential's there. We have Skype calls. We have 360-degree cameras.
Yes.
It's surely not that far off that you can just set up a camera in your living room. The other person sticks on a VR headset.
And they can
call
walk around
you,
your lounge.
And they can walk around and hang out with the whole family sitting around the kitchen table.
Would it be like, because you know how some like famous like people that work in politics and stuff around the world sometimes will show up as what's the word? Like in Star Wars.
What, a hologram?
Yes, holograms. This is real. Like there'll be public speakers who won't go to certain places, but they'll show up in hologram form and give like speeches and stuff. And we've seen them do it before, and that tends to be quite gimmicky as well when they use like Elvis at a concert singing with Celine Dion. That was a thing.
Why not? Hatsune Miku had a hologram performance on David Letterman once.
Well, see, there you go. But could you imagine just being able to have that technology like built into your house? To me, that feels like a big part potentially for gaming, that you have almost like Troy and Abed's Dreamatorium, where you've got a space that's set out where you can walk around and everything's so, like, you have holograms and it's interactive, this virtual reality room that can turn into anything. Like, that to me would be the future.
Well, you seem excited for it now, but with the track record we've seen, you'll like it for about a month and then it'll just be shelved. Another one's the Kinect, where everyone was so excited when the Kinect came out. It can track your arms and your legs, and you could do stupid races where you squat down and then you jump over logs.
No, because it gave us that stupid Star Wars game, and for that I will not forgive them. I'm Han Solo, Solo.
Hey, dancing remixes with customised lyrics.
Oh, so bad.
What more could you ask for?
Not that.
But another thing where it seems like such a good idea, but it's terribly implemented. Then Xbox One, they said it was going to have to be mandatory, and everyone had already soured on the whole concept by then, and it was just, everyone just put the brakes on and said, no, thank you.
Mm-hmm. That and because you could use speech commands, it was always listening, and I think a lot of people got a Big Brother is watching kind of feel and freaked out. But also, I hated the speech commands more because when I was playing Mass Effect 3 and I had the speech commands on and I was making a pivotal choice, you came in while I was playing and asked me a question and it heard your voice and it changed. I was about to pick something else and it went the other way because of what you said. It registered that as what I chose and I'm like, how could you?
One other side effect of that, which I found absolutely hilarious, is that when you're playing online, if people have your microphones routed through their actual speakers and you're losing, you can just say, Xbox turn off. And it turns off their consoles remotely, which makes them forfeit the game and you win.
That's such a dirty thing to do. I would probably do that, though. It depends on who I was fighting against. But if I was mad enough, I would probably do that.
So what other gimmicks can you think of? There's been a lot of gimmick controllers. There's always been like Sega bass fishing, where you got like your Dreamcast controller instead of that. You've got
a lot of racing wheels and
rod.
seats and things that move that kind of give you that arcade feel, but at home. Mm-hmm. Going back to like my early childhood, Duck Hunt.
The old light guns.
Yes, very gimmicky.
Don't work with this current technology.
No,
Did you know that?
Don't. Which is kind of sad. I really loved playing that as a kid.
Nerd talk. The gun would shoot flash a little white light, and it would flash the screen, and whatever the gun could see from that, whichever, like if it was dead center, it would see the whole square because the whole screen would flash white, so it would know where it is. And if it was off to the side, it would know you're pointing to the side. So that's how those sort of light guns worked. I had the light phaser on the Sega Master System. Not a copy, I promise you. But yeah, light gun games, they were point blank. PlayStation era was the greatest, I think, iteration using the G-Con 45, the big chunky Namco pistol. That thing was awesome. There was actually a Resident Evil spin-off series called Survivor, which used that, and you had to hold combinations of buttons on the controller to walk, and it was always awkward if you're being attacked by a big beast and you're trying to make your character walk straight and they're just like turning in a circle. First person, it didn't go that well. I still love that game though.
If we're going back to gimmicky controllers, I think Guitar Hero would have to fall into that then.
Yeah, sort of a one-hit wonder. They, like I said in an earlier podcast, people do use them for that added level of challenge when they want to beat a game like Dark Souls using a guitar controller. Another one's the Dance Dance Revolution match, which we've also talked about in an early episode. Some other weird ones. House of the Dead was a light gun shooter. There was a spin-off of that. Do you know what it was called?
No.
Typing of the Dead.
What?
And a zombie would attack you, a word would pop up, you'd mash into a keyboard what the word is, and if you got it right, the zombie died. You got it wrong, you take damage.
That's
It's like an exact copy of the game, but with using your linguistic skills instead of your rapid aiming.
That sounds like the kind of thing that they make you play at school.
Yeah.
To learn, like
edutainment.
Yes,
Woo-hoo!
where you had to like do. Oh, I can't remember. There was one where you had to do maths equations and stuff to get through certain levels. I think I've blocked it out of my head. To be fair, I don't think that they're terrible ideas. If you're gonna make me do math, then at least make it fun.
Yes.
There are ways to make education fun, and at least if you can trick me into thinking that I'm just playing a game while you're teaching me something. I think that's where I like a lot of RPGs, because there are some that actually have historical information squeezed into it. Squeeze.
Well, Assassin's Creed Origins has basically a virtual tourism mode where you learn about Egyptian culture and things that they did in that era, and you can walk around with no enemies, no mission objectives, and just learn.
And absorb the culture.
And the pulling brains out of noses.
Egyptian culture, I think, has always freaked me out. That's probably because of the mummy.
It is.
Maybe we almost need a podcast of things that have scarred us. It's a side podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Things that have left us damaged from our childhood.
Well, we've surely got a few of them.
I think I've got plenty.
Before we leave on this point of gaming gimmicks, there's two classic examples of things that really work, but they've gained a sort of legendary status since then.
Oh, yeah?
From the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Power Glove.
Oh, wasn't that tied in with the virtual reality? What was he called? Wasn't that tied in with, like, the Virtual Boy?
I'm not sure, to be honest, because as I explained, I was Team Sega back in the day. So anything that Nintendo came out with, I thought was stupid. Except for Donkey Kong Country, that ruled.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one, of course, the robotic operating buddy.
Number 5 is alive.
Rob the robot, who also became a Smash Brothers character.
He did.
He was a accessory that you had, and he was a big little bugger. He's 9-10 inches. This giant robot that would sit next to your controller. And guess how many games he functioned with?
1.
2. They were forward thinkers.
Oh. That was the problem with a lot of those consoles, was that they were preloaded with things, but then that was it. That was all that they could do.
Yeah.
So we should be pretty thankful for where we're at with technology these days. We have access to a huge library of games.
Yep. And just the fact that we have online stores. You don't want to leave your house? You want to get the latest game? You can pay a premium and you can get it.
Yes, you otaku who will stay forever in your room and play. Sometimes I feel like I almost deliberately need to go out to the shops just so I don't feel like I'm such a homebody. Working from home, playing from home. It gets a bit much.
All right. You're going out to get dinner later then.
Okay. Whoops.
Volunteered.
Oh, wait. How could we have forgotten Labo?
Oh, Labo?
Speaking of modern gimmicks, where do you think that one's going to go?
It's the most Nintendo thing possible, in that they're trying something new because they always try something new.
Mm.
And it seems totally uncool, but I want one.
I love the idea of building and working together with the family to make it. But I hate that it's cardboard, because especially if you had little kids, it's so easy to break and destroy.
I don't know if they went with cardboard because it's affordable.
Maybe.
Or if it's a subtle marketing ploy that people will damage it and they'll have to buy more.
It could be a bit of both.
But yeah, if you have a young family and you got kids that love building things, and going through that experience together would be awesome.
Yeah.
And also, who knows, maybe older people who like engineering and construction and things like that. I don't know.
There's certainly a niche market for it, because you've got those that are very creative, and they've got like budding gaming developers that are reprogramming, because there's like a thing where you can actually build new activities in it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like that Mario Maker game that they released not too long ago, or if you have the talent and the patience for it, you can create some pretty incredible stuff. But for the majority of us plebs, we're like, this elastic band, it goes here. Okay, oh, cool, I made a fishing rod.
And that'll get used twice
And then
end
never
up
again.
on the shelf. Yeah.
That's just how I feel how we would use it. But for the right people, it could be fantastic.
If it was half the price that it was, I'd probably get it just out of curiosity to just goof around with it for an afternoon.
That would be the kind of thing I'd want to bring some like friends over and do it together. Like it seems like a fun group activity. And if you had the kids at the right age, would be such a great family bonding experience. For us, I think it's the kind of thing that would sadly be put on the shelf very, very quickly.
Yeah. We've also got future technology. Augmented reality is big at the moment. Pokemon Go sort of use that, using real-world locations and cameras combined with virtual things placed on top of it.
Have we still not got Pokemon Snap?
That would be perfect, wouldn't it?
I know. Come on, Nintendo, please. E3 is coming up soon. Announce Pokemon Snap.
There you go. That's how you print money.
Yeah, legit.
And I think Microsoft are working on the HoloLens, which is like a VR headset that's more augmented reality based, or glasses or something to that effect, where you could have like Minecraft. They used the example, I think it was last year or the year before, was E3. They had Minecraft popping out of a table, and they were, manipulating the pieces with no real controllers, just using their hands. It's kind of that's weird.
It's
Technology's weird.
I mean, that would be cool too. Imagine having a table like that in your house, and that's your gaming table where you build things. I don't know. Again, whether that has any longevity is hard to know. But you never know what's going to catch on.
Yeah. There's always hits, there's always misses. And
Absolutely.
Even the misses are usually fun to talk about in hindsight and
Absolutely.
just be baffled at the technology attempted.
Mm-hmm. So here's hoping that there's some exciting stuff announced at E3 this year and that we can see where the gaming industry is headed next.
Yeah, not far off. A little over a month, I think. Maybe even under.
It's one of my favourite times of year.
Yeah.
I get so excited.
We'll probably watch all the press conferences as we do every year.
Mm-hmm. We might do a special podcast on it.
Yeah. Should be good.
So, down to business.
Oh, business time.
Gaming goals for this week?
Let me check. I've got 3 things. Zelda, and Yakuza 3. I'm chapter 12 in that. No, there are 12 chapters from what I've checked. I'm at chapter 10.
I'm going to add a little bit of pressure to you.
Okay.
For those who don't know, Brendo and I are planning a trip to Japan later this year. So your goal for an extended period of time is to get through and try to finish the Yakuza series before we leave.
Oh, I'm terrible with playing series back to back.
But it's Yakuza, and the good thing is you can get excited because you can be like, hey, we're going to be in that location in real life. Woo!
Virtual tourism.
Shibuya! So excited. Okay, for me, I still want to play the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, do you, though?
I do, but I'm going to add a second one.
So hang on, wait a second. You didn't achieve your gaming goal last week, and this week you're going to try it again and add something else?
Yes.
Well, let's hear it.
So, on my Vita, I would like to finish Trails of Cold Steel 2.
Trails of Cold Steel 2. Another game that you started and has been neglected.
Yes. I got distracted. There too many other good games came out, and I'm like, ooh, shiny.
Yeah.
It happens so often, unfortunately. And that makes it sound bad because Trails of Cold Steel, the series in general, is just a great game. Both of them are great games. They don't deserve to ever be put down. So that's just on me.
But you're like me. If you've been 80% through something and then you've shelved it for 10 months, you feel like you have to just finish that bit off, yeah?
Yes.
The more I listen to my habits on this podcast, the more I think I'm developing OCD.
I think I've had it for a while. It shows itself in some ways and not others. So with gaming, though, absolutely, I have OCD.
All right. Well, we'll see how you do this week.
Okay.
At least finish one chapter of Guardians.
Okay. Yeah, that's more reasonable.
Give your focus to poor, neglected, malnourished Trails of Cold Steel 2.
Off to Thor's Military Academy I go.
Okay. Don't forget your bag.
Oh,
or your lunch. Or your homework. And your sword.
Or my Arcus.
Oh. Magic spells.
Whoop-de-doo.
Whoop-de-doo. Well, that's all we have for this week. I'm off to play Yakuza 3.
While you also play Breath of the Wild, because you can play them both at the
There you
same
go.
time. There's a challenge for you.
I will use my feet.
Double gaming. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you do like it, subscribe, rate us, and also feel free to comment and send us messages, and hopefully we can feature some of them on the show as well. Until next time.
Bye, 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 bye.
Thanks for listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. For more episodes or to watch some live stream gaming, visit thegaminglovers.com.